name is Jason Dovel, and for about the last 8 years, I've been studying the embouchure through the LipCam. The LipCam is a mouthpiece with a hole and a camera in it, and allows you to see in real time what is happening while you play the trumpet. In this short video, I'm going to provide some commentary and show you some videos of students and professionals playing in the LipCam over the last 8 years. So this is my blog. I will provide a specific link to this LipCam blog article in the info section of this YouTube video. There's a lot of text here that I'm not going to read. What I'm going to do is take you through each of these videos and just chat about them a little bit. And so for this first video, it's dynamics and how what the LipCam tells us about dynamics. One thing I'll say is all these videos I have on my YouTube page as a YouTube playlist. Just says LipCam videos. So you can identify that link, find that playlist if you want to watch these videos on your own. So let's just watch these examples of players playing dynamic contrast into the LipCam. And I won't show every single video right now, just so I can have a somewhat concise commentary here. So what you're seeing is what happens with basically every single person I've ever had play in the LipCam in the last 8 years, which is when you play louder, the hole gets bigger, the aperture gets larger, the space between the lips becomes greater. And when you get softer, the hole gets smaller. So as a general rule, we can say the louder we play, the bigger the aperture is, and the softer we play, the smaller the aperture is. And you'll see that in each of the examples in the dynamics video, and that's been the case across the board. What we see right now, where I've screenshotted, is often, how we see apertures drawn in trumpet textbooks, and this is the way it looks sometimes, kind of like a little hole in the middle. But I will tell you that is not the way apertures always look. I will say the reason it's at an angle is because whoever played had the mouthpiece screwed in. The way you screw the mouthpiece in affects the angle of the camera. So this person does not play with a diagonal embouchure. One of the things I get asked about, and one of the reasons people want to try out the LipCam, one of the reasons we want to take lessons in general is to get better at range. And you're going to see some, let's say, common threads about the embouchure with regard to range that we can, let's just say, observe in the aperture. I categorize apertures into two categories: aperture travels up and aperture travels down. I'll show you the aperture travels up videos first. Pause it there for a second. This horizontal line indicates where they began when they played the scale, and you're going to see that that hole, the aperture, is going to ascend above that horizontal line. So these players, the aperture is traveling up as a general rule. Students and professionals who I've observed in the LipCam, when the aperture travels up, they tend to struggle more with range. Below, I'm going to show you some videos of people playing who had outstanding upper register and their aperture travels down. That was pretty dramatic. That was more dramatic in terms of how much motion. If you go here at the beginning, they start, more or less in a central location. What is that? 60-40, 50-50. It's pretty close in the middle. But once they ascend, They are no longer playing in the middle. The aperture has traveled down a lot. But this player has excellent I'm going to pause it here. Subject B is worth commenting on. So this subject also, the aperture traveled down. You all saw that. It went from a more central location closer to the bottom of the screen. So they've now played up to high C. I want you to observe what happens when this player plays from high C to double C. Interesting. There is very little change in the aperture in terms of its location traveling up or down when they go from high C to double C, even though there was a significant change when they went up to the high C, see above the staff. And when they descend here in a moment, you're going to see it change again. You're going to see the aperture kind of go back up to here where it was before. I'm not going to take the time right now to explain why I believe this happens. In other words, why I believe the aperture moves a lot to high C and then doesn't move so much after that. Maybe I'll just say a couple things about it. First, I think sometimes maybe what we're observing is the effect, not the cause. In other words, I would never, as an active instruction to a student, say, make sure your aperture travels down. That'll help with your high notes. I have never said that to a student. I think that's a ridiculous thing to say to a student. But I think there are some other factors that could cause that. And again, I'm not going to get into so much of that right now. We are sometimes seeing the result of some other things that are happening. One thing that's really common, it's so funny to watch the expression on students' faces when they see something they didn't realize they were doing. My teacher, Keith Johnson, used to always say we have pre-flight checks. What are the things we do before we play? And one common thing that people will do is take their tongue and stick it between their lips into the mouthpiece before they play. And often players have no idea they're doing this. See the tongue right there?
C scale.
And sometimes when I see this, I see people stick their tongue in there. I say, are you licking the mouthpiece because you want it to be wet? They'll say, no, I'm not licking the mouthpiece. So this pre-flight tongue check is often something we observe when people play in LipCam that they weren't aware of before. Talk about articulation across the board. When people play, the embouchure behaves more violently when we articulate versus when we're slurring. So we seem to see a more violent behavior of the mouthpiece. And I think for another pedagogical conclusion, this perhaps justifies why, if we're having trouble with a difficult articulated passage, that slurring it is a good idea. We can see that the embouchure is more gentle and more fluid and I don't know, perhaps more efficient. That's probably not the best term to describe that, but it behaves less violently. The embouchure behaves less violently when we slur versus when we tongue. Not everyone plays with the mouthpiece right in the middle of the lips. And sometimes if trumpet players have the mouthpiece off to the side, interestingly, the aperture is going to be off to the side. The first video you're going to see is a slightly asymmetrical embouchure. So you can see they're pretty well closed here on the right of your screen, but the aperture is kind of more focused over here on the left side of your screen. If someone has a more extreme asymmetrical embouchure, you're going to see the apertures moved more. There's a strange kind of a fishbowl quality here to the video, and the reason is I had to really turn the mouthpiece. I think we shot this upside down. The student was not upside down. The mouthpiece was completely upside down. That might not make so much sense if you're using a regular mouthpiece. What I mean is the camera of the the LipCam was upside down. I had to turn the LipCam mouthpiece upside down so I could shoot from below. Another, by the way, there's another pre-flight tongue check. You can see they're closing very much on one side and open on the other. Now, I remember specifically which student this is. I will not say their name to protect their privacy, but I'll tell you, if this looks kind of scary, well, it is. But this student now is a full-time salary-earning musician. This was from earlier in their career, I believe their freshman year. And they turned out just fine, but we had to be mindful of being focused, of having their lips together, and they turned out to be a really successful player, played a beautiful senior recital. So if you ever play a LipCam and see your embouchure like this, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but it may be a clue to some things you may want to work on. We're going to watch a couple of videos of one of our most famous trumpet excerpts here, Stravinsky's Petrushka Ballerina's Dance. By the way, we mentioned before articulation versus slurred, and how the embouchure behaves more violently during articulations than during slur. You can certainly see that right here, because you can see that this excerpt has tongued and slurred passages, and the lips are more gentle and more relaxed. Relaxed is the wrong term, but I think you know what you mean. So I won't show you all of these videos. You can watch the rest of the examples on your own. As a general rule, the smaller the aperture, the easier the response, the better the sound, and the better the range. I know not every teacher may teach that way, and that's okay. I'm just simply observing the phenomena. Some general rules is when you play louder, it gets bigger. When you play soft, it gets smaller. And generally, as you try to play higher, if the aperture is traveling up toward the top of the mouthpiece, that generally seems to be prohibitive for good playing. So just some general pedagogical ramifications. I'm not going to kind of go through all this detail, but as I've said, the smaller the aperture, the better. That does seem to be my observation. I encourage my students to practice soft attacks. I practice soft playing every day. I do Hu-Pu-Tu exercises. I try to play with the smallest aperture possible. And it's been fun to watch, see someone play the LipCam as a freshman and then see them later as a senior. And then sometimes they come back 2 or 3 years later after they are playing professionally, and to see, in many cases, as they have improved as a trumpet player, their aperture is better. One thing I haven't had the time to do yet is to kind of catalog specific players, here's Sally's freshman year, here's Sally's senior year, and here's Sally's video 2 years after they won a job and came back to visit me. I do have some videos like that, I just haven't done that. But I'll tell you, as a general rule, as these players have progressed, I have observed their aperture getting smaller as a general rule. The aperture travel affects range. I won't say too much more about that. I've already mentioned that. I think it's really important to practice dynamic shifts. We saw and we heard that when people played louder and softer, there were big changes in their lips and big changes in the pitch. And so the importance of practicing dynamic shifts. And I think LipCam is also helpful for helping us to eliminate pre-flight checks, such as sticking the tongue in the mouthpiece, but being fully unaware that that is happening. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. And my email is jason.dovel@uky.edu. Happy practicing.